countdown to the last comic shop in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Computer systems are offline.
Hey, it is now time for more of the Last Comic Shop podcast.
I don't know what he's doing, Chad. What's with the voice? I
don't know.
I don't know. We're introducing comics to people who don't maybe read them and want to experience them under this big comic book tent.
That's right. We're keeping the lights on for people that like to do that sort of thing. And we pretend like we review books, but really we just talk about it for a little bit, and then we we recommend other books, and we're trying to help your comic shops sell some merch and keep things.
And don't be freaked out by the weird voices. He just does that sometimes.
Well, I gotta switch it up sometimes. I'm the host with the most, Andy Larson. You think it's so easy being the host with the most, coming up with some way of saying the same thing after 5 years?
Sometimes he just gets possessed by the ghost of Jeff Goldblum.
Right.
Stuff
He's
happens.
Andrew the Changing Man.
Oh, very good,
That's
Mikey.
called a
very
segue.
good.
Yeah.
I am joined by Mikey Wood this week, as well as my regular co-host, Jay Scott and Chad Smith, for Shade the Changing Man, an 8-issue... I'm not going to say it was a mini-series because it was supposed to be an ongoing, and then DC imploded. Or exploded.
Stopped going.
It just stopped. And they just didn't make any more issues. But so the 8 issues were released in the 70s. And again, it was created by one of the titans when it comes to comic books over the 20th century. And that's Steve Ditko, co-creator of Spider-Man, co-creator of Doctor Strange. Actually, isn't he just the creator of Doctor Strange? He's not Yeah, he's just the creator of Doctor Strange, among lots of other things. Did you know that it was Steve Ditko that gave the Incredible Hulk the little nuance of he turns into the Hulk when he gets angry? It wasn't until that was brought on by Steve Ditko that we even had that part of the Hulk, which has become so iconic with the character. He was the one that gave Iron Man a costume that didn't look like shit.
Wow.
What, did you ever see the original Iron
Red
Man
and blue.
costume?
Yeah. He came up with the yellow and
He
color
built
scheme.
it in a cave with a bunch of scraps.
I mean, yeah. What do you want, Couture? Like, he's doing the best he can.
What's that like?
Tony Stark built his suit in a cave.
God almighty.
I was hoping somebody, but yeah, he created so much stuff. So he created Shade the Changing Man too, and we're going to talk about that later in the program. But Mikey brought up a good conversation topic to start off this week's show. Everybody knows that Spider-Man was created by Steve Ditko, or if you don't know, yes, he was co-created by Steve Ditko. And a lot of folks know all of the characters that comes out of the Spider-Man mythos. He was involved with the creation of a lot of those characters. Chad, you've said on occasion that, like, outside of his Rogues Gallery, there's not really a lot of other members of the Rogues Gallery that actually have stuck for Spider-Man, right?
Yeah, I mean, you get Venom. He's one of the later additions. But when you think Spider-Man villains, you're thinking Steve Ditko characters. You got your Electros, your Doc Ocks, your Sandmans, like your Green Goblins. Those are all Ditko. And like the last 30 years, we've gotten like Mr. Negative.
Hey, he was in the video game, so a lot of the young kids know him. But you're right. But Mikey wanted to bring up that he's done more stuff than just Spider-Man. Yeah. So he took us to task to come up with what our favorite Steve Ditko creations are outside of the Spider-Man mythos. And I guess we'll start off with you, Mikey. What's your favorite?
Well, I was trying to stay away from the big two. So originally I was going to say the question. But if I can't use the question, then I'm going to use the answer. Mr. A. Mr. A is a bonkers character that a lot of people may not know this about Steve Ditko, but Ditko was really big into objectivism, which is like this philosophy that was created by Ayn Rand, the author Ayn Rand, and it's a bunch of bullshit and it's terrible, but
How you really feel?
Yeah, ethical egoism is basically what it is, but Mr. A is probably the most hardcore philosophical that Ditko has ever gotten about a character. There is black and white, there is right and wrong, which is why later on Alan Moore would base Rorschach in Watchmen off of the question in particular. But yeah, so Mr. A was he debuted in Wits End #3, which is sort of like a zine kind of thing, and he was only in like a handful of little short stories. If you really want to see them, you have to look for like Ditko Collector magazines, or I mean, if you could reach back and find the old issues, they're kind of a pretty penny. But yeah, Mr. A is my favorite just because it's so weird. Very well drawn though. Like it's just it's and you'll find that as we talk about Shade, when these guys like when Kirby and Ditko and guys like that were sort of let off the chain to kind of do their own thing, it usually resulted in something kind of weird. So
interesting. It's always interesting.
Yeah.
I've never read Mr. A. That's one of those that I haven't been able to track down affordably.
Yeah.
So that's a missing piece in my comic vernacular.
Well, how about you go next, Chad? What's your favorite non-Spider-Man? I know this is kind of tough given how much you love Spider-Man, but you have to have somebody else.
Yeah, this is an easy answer. Now, I'm going to say this is a character that was developed much more after Steve Ditko had co-created her, and it's mainly that additional development is one of the reasons why I love her. But still, Steve Ditko deserves credit as a creator because Squirrel Girl doesn't exist without Steve Ditko, and we should be giving our comic creators their props for their imagination and all the things that they bring into this world to let other people play with those toys and even improve upon them. But yeah, I love Squirrel Girl. The Ryan North, Erica Henderson, Derek Charm of Squirrel Girl is just one of my favorite things. I still to this day taking umbrage because people don't appreciate it nearly enough as they should. But no, it's a fantastic character, and just the basic premise of you have this relatively novice, sweet, innocent character who she beats everybody, and she beats everybody because she looks at things differently. She's not out to punch the bad guys or just stuff squirrels in their pants. She finds other ways to get the win, sometimes just by talking and sometimes stuffing squirrels on their pants, whatever works. But Squirrel Girl is a wonderful character, so thank you, Mr. Ditko, for that.
Oh yeah, and plus that first appearance of Squirrel Girl actually has Steve Ditko drawn Iron Man, which is always a treat, and Doctor Doom, which again is always a treat. Like I love reading that issue just because you get Steve Ditko drawing these guys. J.A., well, who's your favorite?
I like the Creeper.
Ooh,
yeah.
Who he co-created with Don Siegel. I just love the idea of this guy's a talk show host by day, or night rather, since he's a nighttime talk show host, and then goes out and transforms into what is the worst but yet best superhero name in The Creeper, where he creeps around and creeps people out and looks very creepy. I also liked him a lot in Danger Street, which we read last year, of course, in first issue special.
Yeah. Well, I've got to say that my favorite Ditko outside of Amazing Spider-Man was actually his run on Machine Man after Jack Kirby fell off that title. It's kind of crazy to think that the Machine Man title, when it was originally released, was like the first time you had a book that was done by Kirby and then Ditko since like the 60s, like back to back. But like unlike Shade, as we'll get to in a little bit, the Machine Man run actually took a character was kind of floundering. Like Machine Man was like all over the place, and he gave him a backstory of working for an insurance company. He gave him a really awesome bad guy in Sunset Bane, who they've actually used in like Iron Man issues since then. And he worked with Tom DeFalco, who was a really great scripter on all these issues. Gave him a kind of a neat rogues gallery, which again we'll get to in Shade. How like Steve Ditko comes in and he just immediately gives a character a rogues gallery because that's how Steve Ditko works. But if it hadn't been for those particular issues of Machine Man, you wouldn't eventually get, which I think is one of arguably the best Machine Man stories ever, with Machine Man 2020. Because in essence, Machine Man 2020, which was released a little bit after this particular series ended in the 80s, ended up being like kind of like, well, what would happen if Machine Man was broken down and had to be rebuilt many, many years later. And Tom DeFalco wrote it, and it has Barry Windsor Smith art. But you wouldn't get that if you didn't have all that table setting done by Steve Ditko on the Machine Man series.
I thought you were going to bring up Next Wave.
Yeah, you would have eventually Machine Man. But I don't want to say that because in the end, Machine Man is a Kirby creation. It's just that Steve Ditko, kind of like the Incredible Hulk, right? Like I mentioned before, that the Hulk is also a Kirby creation. But Steve Ditko comes in and goes, this is a pretty good character. If you just switch this and move this wire over there and this wire, okay, this character makes more sense now and actually has a purpose and a direction. And that's what he did with Machine Man, because, I'll be very blunt. You read those first 8-9 issues of Machine Man where Kirby was on it, just weird stuff. He made an insurance salesman.
Yeah.
Put him in a suit and tie. It was kind of fun. Yeah, whatever.
Hey, it spun out of 2001. What do you expect?
Right. That's true. Any case, so those are some of our favorite Steve Ditko creations, and we hope that you stick around for another Steve Ditko creation right after these commercial breaks when we talk about Shade, the Changing Man, right after this.
For the Changing Man, his outfit's pretty consistent throughout.
It is. It is.
LastComicShopPodcast.com is the destination for all things shop. Plan your week with upcoming show schedules, the latest books, recommendations, and chatter from the crew. Subscribe to the show on all major podcasting platforms from one convenient location. Show your support and browse the merch store. T-shirts, tanks, hoodies for the fam, coffee mugs, magnets, totes, and more. Check out exclusive content through the show's YouTube channel and follow the pod on Instagram, Blue Sky, Threads, and others. All this and so much more at www.lastcomicshoppodcast.com. www.lastcomicshoppodcast.com.
Dave, Liam, it's a trailer. Watch It If You Can podcast. Join us for each episode as we create box sets of our favourite films and TV shows.
We go through the cast to see what else they've been in, along with any recommendations.
We pick our favourite characters, performances, moments and highlights from the soundtrack too.
We ask if there's anything to make it better and look at the lasting legacy of our pick.
We have a little fun with our quickfire round, and finally, what else would you like list based on themes from the episode.
Maybe, just maybe, you should watch it if you can.
And we are back to talk about Shade, the Changing Man. We'll go to creators first because that'll be a lot faster than Andrew's 10-cent synopsis. So, Chad.
There you go. All right, so we are looking at 8 issues that were published out of DC Comics circa 1977. It was bi-monthly, and as Andrew alluded to earlier, it made 8 issues and then was a victim of the DC implosion, where they were supposed to be the explosion of all these different books coming out. Instead, they ended up taking the next issues and putting them into a Xerox phone book. And they made 35 copies. Like, look, we officially published these. But anyway, so that was story and art were both done by Steve Ditko. A dialogue was added by one Michael Fleischer. And then colorists changed. The initial issue was Liz Berube, but eventually Jerry Serpe takes over colors, and it was lettered by a host of people, Ben Oda, Bill Morse, maybe 1 or 2 others there as well.
All right, and these 8 issues, not including the trash can 9th, Andrew, tell us, give us a 10-cent synopsis. What happens in the Shade?
That's not trash can. That's ash can. I guess I'm sure that some of them ended up in the trash. Any case, the 10-cent synopsis is as follows. The series deals with Rack Shade, a former secret agent of the alternate dimension known as Meta, who was falsely convicted of treason by a mysterious group of conspirators. He escapes from his prison located in a limbo-esque pocket dimension called the Zero Zone to Earth, where he finds a miraculous invention called the Miracle Vest, or M-Vest for short. The M-Vest seems to radiate a manipulative force field, which Shade can use for both.
What? I got to interrupt. It's a vest. It's not shorts. There's no shorts involved there. It's kind of like a
No,
little
there's
tunic
not
that
shorts,
goes
but
into
for
underpants.
short. They call it M-vest because they don't
Okay.
want.
Carry on. You're good.
He does kind of wear like red
He
hot
wears really
pants.
tiny pants.
He's got those
Like-
red hot pants going on.
Yeah.
Right. He
And the
does.
circles. He's got a lot of circles.
It's not a mini skirt like Magnus Robot Fighter.
Okay,
but
all
like
right. M-Vest radiates this manipulative force field which Shade can use for both offense and defense, while at the same time creating a mental illusion that Shade's own body is morphing, along with the size and shape of the field. Thus, enemies see him punching with gigantic fists or kicking them with elephant-sized legs.
It's more like an M onesie. Because it goes into the underpants.
Yeah.
Can I just finish this 10-cent
It's like that-
synopsis and then you
okay.
can talk about his fashion sense?
I'm sorry. You're right.
Armed
that-
with the M-Vest, Shade begins his quest to clear his name and find those responsible for the conspiracy to frame him. This puts him in direct crosshairs of an evil organization of super criminals led by a robotic ball-shaped person named Suede. Was it Suede? Was it Swood? I don't know how
I
you
pronounced it sued like dude. But that was just me.
I pronounced it Suede, even though it doesn't have an A in it. I get it, but that every single time I saw it, if you
Suede doesn't have an A in it. The word suede.
who wants the M-Vest for themselves, and also wants to ensure that Shade never finds out the truth. All along, Shade is being hunted by his former lover, Melu, who personally wants to see him executed for his role in her parents becoming crippled as a result of an explosion. There you go. That's the
And
10
if all
cents.
that feels like a lot of exposition, that's just the first 2 pages of the first issue.
That's right.
Yes.
Buckle
Yes. This is Silver
Buckle up.
Age wrapped up in Golden Age, in which there's a lot of exposition
It's a lot.
in these 8 issues.
It is.
And who knew that Steve Ditko created Facebook?
Yeah, basically. Yeah.
Some alternate reality where people are...
That's right. Wearing vests with little circles and no shoes.
From the meta world?
Do you think those goggles would have gone over better had they had onesies to go with them with extra stripes?
Yeah, let's make sure we loop back around to the onesie thing, because that's I'm interested in this. It's like that terry cloth thing that Bond wears in that one James Bond movie. You know, that one piece powder blue. I don't know.
Yeah, Goldfinger.
It was 1977. You know, what are you gonna do?
But this was supposed to be a major character. Like, if you look at some of the ads that are included in some of the issues, he's among their pantheon. Here's all these awesome characters DC will be coming out with: Batman, Superman, Shade.
Can we hire Ron Howard to come in and go, it was not a major character? Can we hire him to do a little narration there, like on Arrested Development?
But
yeah. It's an interesting character, though.
And to your point, Mikey, it ended up having a lasting impact on comic books, because they eventually took Shade the Changing Man, at least the name, and actually did something with it, right?
Yeah, it's him. It's Rack Shade. Yeah, so I came about these 8 issues of Shade the Changing Man backwards. 1990-ish, the big thing for me in comics was Sandman. Sandman had come out. I was reading Sandman and Hellblazer and Swamp Thing, and I was like 17 years old. Just was all of these things were landing at the same time, and Shade the Changing Man came out. This was by Peter Milligan with Chris Bocciolo on art, and it was part of the whole sort of British invasion thing at the time. And a lot of people say, yeah, it's like the first Vertigo book. But it wasn't a Vertigo book until like the 30th issue. It ran 70 issues in total. So it ran for like 3 years before Vertigo was even a thing. So, but it was sort of the precursor along with those things. And the book was really, really cool. And I went to the comic shop to pick up an issue at some point to pick up my comics. And the guy behind the counter who I always used to taunt because he looked like Richard Marx, he said, hey, I got like 3 or 4 of the originals. And I had no idea there was the originals, because kids, this was before there was the internet. You have to understand. We didn't know these things.
So when did you know that you were getting half of the series when he said you had 3 or 4?
I didn't. I had no
originals?
idea. So I found like a couple of them there and things like that. And then I found the 8th issue, and I was like, cool, I've got 8 issues. And I spent literal years looking for issue 9 or 10 or anything until I finally said, hey, do you know if there's issue 9 for this? And he told me that there was never an issue 9. And I was flabbergasted because it said that in the book that there was going to be another one. And I had just gone through this with the Shadow from DC when I was waiting on the next issue that never came out. So I went backwards, and they're vastly different books, but they're both kind of surreal and both really weird, and they work independently of each other because they don't really work together at all. You don't.
This book doesn't work with anything. Like,
it's weird. It's a weird.
I don't even know if it works with itself, to be honest. I really struggled with this. It wasn't just that it was very, very, very wordy. Yeah. It was so much new stuff. Everything new, so much world building, but just the worst kind of world building, where it's like, that's a really bad made up name, and that's followed by another really bad made up name. It's just like they had all this stuff, and it felt like Steve Ditko had so many ideas. He needed an editor to help focus some of that stuff. Why do you have to have these 8 different worlds? And then you had this element of like villain of the week coming over from the negative zone for a while, and that was just like, are we gonna do this for every issue? You
didn't like some of the rogues gallery that he was. I mean, again, that's his shtick. That's what worked for Spider-Man. You bring out a new villain every single month, and that's how you build up like these guys. I don't know. Chad,
there was something that looked real cool. No, I agree with everybody. I think this is crazy pants, and I also think that a lot of it doesn't work, but I also would say that when it does work, it sings. There are certain ideas and concepts in here that I think really work. And it wasn't just him taking the easy way out and saying, yeah, there's another world over here. Like, there's levels upon levels and things that I'm not entirely sure I understood because I got kind of bored just glossing over some things. But then you would have moments where, like, people were just terrorized and they're just left screaming. Ah! Yeah. You can see these faces. Ah!
Yeah, in the zone of madness or whatever.
Yeah. Like, that was bonkers. And I love the look of chaos and then Sued or Suede or whatever it was. Like, the big reveal there. Like, wait a minute. And then all of a sudden the character that's in there goes into a coma, and I didn't see that happen. I don't know what's going on. But, yeah, like, you would get some of those weird, surreal Steve Ditko, like Doctor Strange moments. At least I was like, oh, that's really cool. That's really fun. And then you'd get 30 other pages of like, what? Who's this? What? They're this person's? I don't know. So it's the best and worst of all the worlds. Some of the worlds weren't even worlds. They were just levels and zones.
Yeah. I felt like at times it was kind of a weird mix of a lot of Steve Ditko's previous creations, kind of like, again, the Rogues Gallery from Spider-Man mixed with like all the psychedelic tendrils and eerie ghost grotesque lines that he had in Dormammu's Dark Dimension. I mean, I honestly thought at times when they would go to that Zero Zone, I would see like nameless ones running around and some guy saying, I'll defeat them with the flames of Faulty.
There were at least 4 Doctor Stranges in here.
Yeah.
Just wandering around.
That Wizor guy that runs that orc place, like, he wasn't just like a throwaway from a Doctor Strange comic. And even Mela, right? Like, this girl that spends most of her time yelling about how she loves him, but she wants to kill him, but she wants revenge and whatever. She looks exactly like Cleo in some of those scenes everybody knows is Doctor Strange's main squeeze. So, I mean, again, it was kind of like a neat continuation of some of the stuff he would have continued to do on Doctor Strange had he been on the title for longer.
It could have been, actually. I mean, if you imagine his vest being a magical cloak or something, they could probably be easily rewritten into Doctor Strange stories. Honestly.
Oh yes,
right.
Like they're
but once again, is it a vest?
It's a onesie. I'm with you on the onesie. I am. It's definitely. I mean, the book is idea vomit, and that happens a lot when you let sort of people that don't generally write write a book, it's idea vomit. It's all this stuff piled on and piled on and piled on and piled, almost as if it's like, I got to get it all out now because I don't know how long this book is going to last. You know.
Yeah. No, Kirby was the same way with some of his best stuff and the New World and Command and all that stuff. It's just crazy idea after crazy idea.
OMAC is a great example. How long did OMAC last? Like
8 issues, right?
8 issues, yeah. And it was a bunch of stuff vomited on the pages, and not everything hits. But it's interesting that Shade is still part of the DC sort of. I mean, there was Shade the Changing Girl, which was a spinoff where Rack Shade is in the Vertigo book. He's kind of like a poet and all these other things. Like he becomes this thing, almost like this rock star thing. So Shade the Changing Girl. And that was just in, what was it, 2016, 2017, something like that?
Yeah, wasn't that part of Young Animals?
Young Animal, yeah. Yeah, it's kind of, and Shade has come back in like Justice League Dark. He's been in, he was in the first trade for that, the new 52 version of Justice League Dark. So he's still part of the DC thing. He hasn't like faded to necessarily obscurity. It's kind of this weird obscurity where it's like he pops up occasionally.
I do want to pose the question, though, because, again, when we're talking about Steve Ditko in this particular series, and then we're talking about some of the stuff that Jack Kirby did, and I guess I'll start off by asking the question to J.A., do you feel like books like this reinforce, like, hey, Stan Lee did do some stuff. You know what I mean? Like, he did do something, because, like, otherwise you get this if you don't have somebody reining them in.
Yeah, I mean, not just Stan Lee, the writer. I think Stan Lee, the editor, whoever helped edit the books and sort of drill down. I think less is more often. Especially when it comes to Golden Age, Silver Age, the better books, the books that tend to stand up are the ones that take one idea instead of 10 ideas.
Yeah, sometimes these guys need somebody to reel them in, and I think that might be something that was missing from these books. And
I would say too, I think just looking at the power sets from the M1Z, I think had this book come out 30 years later, the representation, I think, with more modern coloring techniques could have been more clear.
Well, I think they would have delved into, the whole mental aspect of it. They didn't really get into that. To me, was much more interesting. Sort of what they perceive this guy, the Changing Man, as opposed to it's just like he's kind of bigger, so they don't know where the fist is when it's hitting.
Right.
I'm like, come on, how are they not going to know where the fist is? They just got hit by it, so they're going to feel it. What would happen if Shade fights Daredevil?
He wouldn't see it. I was going to say that was, I think, the most confusing part. It was just overcomplicated how he would draw Shade, and then he would draw like the overlay over top. And I was just like, no, like cut the over or have a panel with the overlay and then just turn him into whatever the pure person sees, and don't forget about Shade. Like forget all about because that's,
or do the Sue Storm thing, or maybe do the Peter Parker Spider-Man half and half.
Because like you would see like the little tiny Shade and then this other thing, and I'm like,
so you wanted it to be more like Ben 10. That he actually becomes these things, like
something like that. That whatever the person would see, that's what we would see too. And then after he turns the vest off, he turns back, and you're like, oh, okay. Because otherwise, I was just like, why is this giant? Does he have like Reed Richards? Like, why is this thing like this giant fist? I was just like, and at times, like his face would be half like giant and then half not. And I don't get this, Ditko. You came up with this awesome design for the cloak with all these these circles everywhere, and I thought that was an awesome look for a bad guy. But you can't like just simplify what your main protagonist looks like. That.
It's definitely experimental. It's definitely something that he was trying to see what stuck. Like later on, the version of Shade, he's killed off and regenerates. Like he's like Duncan Idaho in the Dune books. Like he just except without cloning. But like he was a woman for a while. He was like all sorts of like, it just gets, I really highly recommend that people read these 8 issues. And when they're done kind of sitting in their bedroom in the dark, wondering what the hell just happened, to go and read the 70 issues of the Vertigo book, because you'll ask what just happened, but in a different way. Yeah.
See, I still don't know if I know what happened. I feel like there is a part of me that wants to go back and reread these 8 issues again. Because like there are parts like I like the relationship with, and I in my mind she was milieu. Like, this is from this milieu, with her parents and like. Yeah. There were parts I enjoyed, but I definitely feel like there are parts that it's like I don't know if I connected with all this stuff. And then on the other hand, I think I don't want to read these again.
I don't understand how there were characters, they would be introduced and then later on he would make the same character but different. Like in the first 2 issues, you're introduced to this guy named Lieutenant EMP, but his also name was Kendo or
Kembo, yeah.
Whatever his name was. He looked like J. Jonah Jameson. He had like little mustache and like slick black hair or whatever. Real evil looking dude. Any case, he has that. And then later on, they introduce the same character, but call him like something else.
Colonel Lopek.
Yeah, it's the same character. Why couldn't you just... Why? Why did you... Why?
But they're jumping from zones. They're going from this zone to the Earth zone and the Meta zone. And
they're superpowered onesies.
The Calzone zone.
But you have that, but then you have like other like neat ideas, like when he goes into the coma and he turns the different colors. That's kind of neat. And the whole time, and I guess before we go to commercial break, I was going to ask this. Sometimes, Ditko would kind of weave in some of his philosophy into these books. Did anybody pick up something that was like, that jumped out of you from Shade that was like, that's Randian? Like, is it the distrust of government? Like how, like they framed him, the conspiracy against this guy?
Yeah, it's doing the right thing for your own personal benefit and gain.
There's always that. Yeah, I mean, that was probably the most overt. There's the conspiracy against him, and he's fighting for righteous causes and to clear his name.
Yeah,
but he doesn't.
No, he doesn't. He
of course not, because that's then he wouldn't be changing anymore.
The hero's quest. Listen, I can sum this book up as in the back page of, I'm flipping through my issue number 1 here, which I picked up out of some buck bin. They have a crossword puzzle. Where someone had gone through and filled in the crossword puzzle. And like the first line, they circled Teen Titans. And the second line, they circled Detsepik Zunu. And that's this book. Some of it makes sense. And some of it is just some kid just circling whatever they want to circle and making the best out of it.
All right. Well, we're going to get to commercial break. We've got our ratings for Shade the Changing Man, these 8 issues, plus recommendations. So stick around for all of that.
BCWSupplies.com has everything a comic collector could need. Boards, bags, long boxes, and so much else for our ever so increasing collections. And you can save 10% on your total order by using promo code LCSPOD at checkout. Not only does this take 10% off BCW Supplies' already low prices, but it supports my favorite podcast, The Last Comic Shop. So get all your collecting gear at bcwsupplies.com and save 10% on your order with promo code LCSPOD at checkout. That's LCSPOD at checkout. Happy hunting!
Madison is on the air.
What happens when 20-something Madison is zapped into old-time radio shows? No technology.
I want to go to voicemail.
No Starbucks.
Don't call yourself a coffee shop if you only sell drip coffee.
And no one is PC.
I don't need no lift from...
Were you about to say woman? Because I'm wearing a gun and I have no idea how to use it.
Madison on the Air serves to highlight the way we were and the way we are today with original radio drama scripts adapted to include the modern-day Madison as she joins famous characters from radio's past, including Sergeant Joe Friday.
Just the facts, ma'am. I've never actually said that.
Marshal Matt Dillon.
We're not having a shootout with a 10-year-old kid.
I'm too woke to be a part of this.
Superman.
I didn't realize how cold it would be flying like this.
I have to get into the higher atmosphere.
And many more. Visit us on the web at madisonontheair.com or find us pretty much any place podcasts can be found.
You talk so old-timey. I have no idea what you said, but it's adorbs.
All right, we're back with more of The Last Comic Shop, and it is now time for ratings, where we hope that you don't change into a onesie while you listen to our show. Although, I'm never going to shame you for what you want to wear while you're listening to our show, you know.
Not going to shade.
Throw some shade on the fact that you want to wear adult diapers. That's...
I don't know.
That's all I can think of when somebody says onesie. I'm like, well, isn't that like onesies, diapers?
No, I think the kids are into that stuff these days.
Oh, yeah?
Fashion. Yeah.
Right.
Romper. They're called rompers.
There you
go. Yeah. I did see that Liquid Death came out with like special underwear where if you needed to go to a concert, you could like wear them and then you wouldn't have to go to the bathroom or leave your spot in the mosh pit. Yeah, Liquid Death.
Do that all the time.
And who's going into a mosh pit with an adult diaper? Somebody hits that. That's a disaster. Disaster.
All right.
Don't squeeze the Charlotte.
Then it's a mess pit, not a
J.A.,
mosh
get us on another topic. What is our 1 out of 4 scale this week?
1 out of 4 onesies, of course. Come on.
Yeah. Oh, look at that. And you got the little lullaby music there. Oh, everybody loves their onesies.
That's right.
Does Chad love his onesie? He's going to go first with his rating of these 8 issues of Shade the Changing Man.
1977 was a good time for circles. You got Shade's onesie with all the circles in it. You got Firestorm's costume. I was seeing ads for that in here. Oh, they've got some pretty killer circles in there. Like I said, parts of it were really cool, and I really enjoyed, and parts of it didn't make sense to me, just because it was idea after idea after idea after idea. And so I'm going to give it a 2.25 onesies. So maybe some shorter pants to go along with that last onesie. I did not have the best time reading this book, but I'm glad that I did. Like I said, I've been collecting it out of buck issue bins, and I have like 1 or 2 or more issues to go. I don't know if I'm going to get them now, but I enjoyed it. There were some neat characters. I liked the form. I liked chaos. I am kind of sad that there was never, even all these years later, nobody went back to be like, here's how we're going to wrap this up and give it a nice little tidy ending there. Because it was not an ongoing. It was a stop going. An 8-issue stop going. So yeah, 2.25. It's fun when the Steve Ditko stuff is on, and then it's very confusing and overly wordy and tough to get through when it's not.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to go next, and I think I'm going to agree with you, Chad. I think this is a little bit higher. I think I'm going to give it a 2.5. It's a little bit above average, maybe even a 2.75, a little bit closer to that. But I'm not going to sugarcoat the fact that this series really seemed aimless at times and was, as to J.A. put it, kind of a slog to read at first. I mean, that first page, like, it is really difficult to understand what the heck is going on. It starts with this like jailbreak, but you don't know any of the characters, and why should you care? And I mean, eventually you get this overall mystery into who framed Shade, and there's some kind of neat characters that kind of try to fill in the gaps. But like, boy, howdy, it's just tough. It's tough to care about anything. I mean, on one hand, you got this really cool exposition about things like that zone of madness, to Chad's point, where people are coming out of it and they're screaming, "Oh no!" and you're like, "Oh, that's kind of cool. That's awesome." And then you got like these internal power struggles with all the bad guys to decide who the top rat was. Despite the fact that you get these super cool villains in each issue, they're awesomely designed. But I could also spend just as much time talking about how little any of them really mattered to the story at all. Even Chaos.
Sometimes they're given names like crimesters.
That Chaos guy, super cool. Thought he was going to rule the world. Is dispatched in like 2 issues. And just all of a sudden, just an explosion off panel, and you're like, all right, fine. So I just, it's hard for me to really love this series, even though I do love the art. A lot of these guys were nameless, backstoryless bad guys for Shade to punch, and again, it was really weird how he punched them. I was just like, I don't understand how you're punching people. So yeah, it's just a 2.5 though, because I can't give it anything less than that. I can't say this is a bad book. I think you should read it. It's out in omnibus right now with an equally interesting series of stories that Steve Ditko did, I think with Wally Wood, called Stalker, which is kind of a cool fantasy book. So like, you should pick it up because this is Steve Ditko. He's one of the greats of comic books, and he kind of took some swings with this book. Not all of them connected, but at least they're pretty cool swings. J.A.?
Yeah, I can't give it more than a 2. It's a 2 for me. I mean, it's barely average. It was such a slog to get through. Half of the time I didn't have any interest in the characters, and it was hard for me to generate interest in the characters. It's a 2 and not less than a 2, only because there was some really great bonkers Steve Ditko art. I really like that. And it kind of reminded me, I wonder, and this is why I'm interested to hear what Mikey Wood has to say. Someone who only knew Flash Gordon from the movie and going back and then watching the Buster Crabbe Flash Gordon, because the movie is very sort of, okay, it's 2 hours, it's very set, it doesn't go super deep into the Flash Gordon mythos, but then when you go back to the serials, because they had a lot more time to play with, you get all these different things that are thrown in, and like one day you get the Rockman and you get the walking bombs, you get all these other weird, let's throw something at the wall and see if it sticks. Not all of it sticks. This was kind of like that, with very similar outfits as well. I mean, the onesie with the spinning discs, for someone who is famous for some of these great costumes, these all felt like retreads or him just sort of scraping the bottom of the imagination barrel to come up with something that was quirky and new and interesting, but ultimately it just looked like a bunch of circles on a page. It didn't stick. So I can't really recommend this to someone unless you're a really big Steve Ditko fan and you want to read a lot of what Steve Ditko had and get a chance to see when he had the, concept duties as well as the artwork, what he could do. Other than that, there's better Shade the Changing Man, which I'm sure we'll hear about from Mikey Wood, if you're interested in this weird character. And there's better Steve Ditko if you're interested in Steve Ditko. It's not a bad thing that it only lasted 8 issues.
All right, Mikey, finish us off.
Yeah, and it should be mentioned that there was Michael Fleischer also worked on the script for these Shade books. He was the sort of the co-writer, I suppose. But yeah, I mean, I'd say it's kind of like a 2.5 also, because it's this is one of those books where, and I can say this because somebody I know did this. It's really interesting to read when you're on acid. I don't recommend it because that's kids. That's bad. It's illegal. But no, it's
bad kids.
That's right. And because I read it sort of in a roundabout, backwards way, I got to see what they kept and carried over into the Vertigo book, which was sort of the bare essentials, but the character really gets fleshed out and stretched in this. So I think, like you said, this is more of either a completist thing or like a curiosity kind of thing. Like if you really want to read something odd, this could be for you. Although there's other, like I would more recommend sort of his question stories that came out as backups in Blue Beetle back in the Charlton days and things like that. And again, I wasn't like you guys. I wasn't a Spider-Man guy growing up. I never was. The only Ditko I knew prior to this was a couple of old issues of Hawk and Dove that I had found somewhere. And I think around about the time that I was reading, I can't remember, when did Speedball come out? Was that like...
That was mid-'80s.
Yeah, so that was like 1990 and stuff was when. So I knew Ditko from Speedball because a friend of mine had that, and like a couple of other little random things that I had. But for the most part, I wasn't all that familiar with him. I didn't know he was huge, and I didn't know this was one could probably say post-heyday book for him.
This was his return to the big two.
Oh, was it? Okay, yeah. So yeah, it's a 2. It's like a 2.5 maybe. I think I don't think it's essential by any means. but it's definitely a curiosity. So if you ever see him lying around in a buck bin or something, just grab him and just be prepared to not quite understand what you experienced. Yeah.
All right. Well, one thing that we hope that you always will understand is our recommendations. Yes, this is that time of every single show where we give you other comic books in addition to Shade the Changing Man, which, as Mikey pointed out, you can get in single issues, sometimes in buck bins for sure, or in as I said, an omnibus. There's an omnibus of, I think it's called Steve Ditko Archives Volume 1. And again, it includes Shade the Changing Man, all 8 issues, plus his work on this Stalker series, which was kind of weird, too. I found those in buck bins as well. But we're going to start off with Jay Scott, who's got our first recommendation of the day. So what do we got for us?
Yeah, if you are looking for something that is interesting in terms of sort of new ideas or playing with some toys that have existed, were created by Jack Kirby, I would heartily recommend the new ongoing New Gods series by writer Ram V with Evan Cagle art and Jorge Fornes as the guest artist for a couple pages here and there throughout. I mean, it's only a couple issues in, but it's just fantastic stuff. Essentially, the High Father is given a mission to Orion to kill a baby that's a new god being born on Earth. And Orion shows up and tells Scott Free, you need to save the baby so I don't kill the baby, because I don't want to be a baby killer, but I've got to follow what High Father tells me to do. And Scott Free is like, yeah, I don't want to. I've got a baby of my own, and I got to change the diapers, and Bart is in there on the couch asleep. And Orion's like, yeah, but, how can you not do this and look at your baby and tell them that you're a good father if you don't save? He's like, why don't you just not kill it? He's like, I can't do that. Which I just
I can't stop being a dick. I'm Orion.
Yes, that's exactly what he says, essentially. But it's just fantastically scripted taunt and some really beautiful art. So it's if you like the original Kirby New Gods, if you like Tom King, Mr. Miracle, if you just like the idea of Mr. Miracle and Orion and High Father and Darkseid and all this stuff, Metron, this plays with all the toys.
I will second that recommendation. I've been really, really enjoying that. By the way, Mikey, is the kid Darkseid? Because Darkseid's dead at the beginning of this book. Is the kid Darkseid?
I think it probably is. Yeah.
Okay.
That's the vibe I'm getting, because he died in the DC All In special, and that's what I'm thinking. Ram V's awesome. Ram V's like, everything he writes is just
that does bring up something real quick. What is this All In? Is this just a DC Initiative thing? Because I'm seeing it on all but I don't know. Is it crossover event, or is that like a New 52 thing? What is it?
It's like a soft reboot of their titles, like a reorganization, new creators. Again.
It's been really good. It's actually everything I've read.
Marvel does this too. They just reissue number ones. I'm so sick of this stuff. Just give me continuous numbering, please. I don't need a brand new number one. So then I've got X-Men number 1, 2002. X-Men number 1, 2022. X-Men number 1, 2023. Just give me X-Men 455.
Moon Knight, where there's like another issue number 1 every 3 weeks or something. I can't remember what it was. Moon Knight rebooted so many times. It's just like, oh.
And speaking, by the way, of Ram V, if you want some awesome stuff done by Ram V and Evan Cagle, you can go back to the Last Comic Shop archives and listen to our review of Dawn Runner, done by that team as well. And we're going to go to Mikey Wood, who recommended that we read Dawn Runner on this show. So what recommendation do you have for us today?
Since we were talking about Shade, I would recommend like the first trade paperback for Justice League Dark. It's called In the Dark, and it collects the first 6 issues of the New 52 era Justice League Dark. Now, the second run of Justice League Dark that came out later, I think, was a better run all around. But this first storyline features Deadman and John Constantine, and Shade the Changing Man plays a big role in it, and it's real good. It's kind of like the the Justice League Island of Misfit Toys. It's like all the characters that people are afraid of sort of team up together and do their thing. So it's a cool little short little story.
Very good.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of another trade that I think that you should pick up, Flash Gordon, that has been going on from Mad Cave, has finally been put out in a trade paperback, the first 5 issues, and I've been absolutely loving this Flash Gordon series, done by writer Jeremy Adams with artist Will Conrad. It's kind of turning some things about Flash Gordon on their head, but kind of in a good way. Dale Arden becoming the new Ming the Merciless and running the Empire. The Flash Gordon is on the planet of death, which is some sort of intergalactic prison, and he has to break out of it with Ming the Merciless. Yeah, Ming and Flash are teaming up in this book. And then they put Zarkov's consciousness into a robot, and it just sings. And it sings in a different way than a lot of the other Flash Gordon that I've enjoyed over the years, whether it's been the original Alex Raymond strips or even more recently, the awesome run that Jeff Parker and Doc Shaner did several years back for Dynamite. I've enjoyed it. It's now out in trade, so I recommend that you pick it up. And plus, if you can find it in issues, and I think it's also in the trade too, they actually have some of the reprints of the awesome Flash Gordon comic strip that's been going over there at Comics Kingdom since 2023. And that's probably my favorite Flash Gordon. That is truly my real recommendation that you check that out. But yeah, you can get some of the panels in these, and another pretty good Flash Gordon done by Jeremy Adams and Will Conrad. So hope that series continues well into the future. Chad?
Okay, so when we started this episode, I didn't have my recommendation, and then Mikey brought up Speedball. Oh my goodness, did I love Speedball back in the 90s. And so that's going to be my recommendation, is that you guys track down the New Warriors Omnibus that contains the first 26 issues of the New Warriors by Fabian Nicienza and Mark Bagley, as well as their first appearances and Thor, a couple of the annuals. It was the Young Avengers before there were Young Avengers. It starts off with one of the new characters, Night Thrasher, holding Nova at the top of a building and then dropping him because he's trying to help Nova discover his powers again. And Nova comes back up and says, "What would you have done? I didn't have my powers." So it's like, I don't know. But the whole book was filled with teen angsty drama, and they fight Terrax. They go into the future and have their own Days of Future Past style story. Marvel Boy goes on trial. There's all kinds of fun stuff in these first 26 issues of New Warriors, and Speedball is just such a fun character in these books. It was before they screwed him up and then tried to unscrew him up again later on when he became Penance and all that other stuff. Mm-hmm. But just another example of taking somebody's creation and running with it and really making it work as part of something bigger. And so, yeah, the New Warriors Omnibus, definitely something that is worth your time.
Yeah. And how awesome was Night Thrasher? Not only did he have an awesome costume, but he rode around on a skateboard with those 2 fighting sticks. Man,
he's the most 90s.
They originally called Nova Kid Nova for a while, and then they were like, no. And that confused me, too, because I knew him as Nova, right? Actually, I was like, isn't there a Nova that's a girl that's pretty hot? And I was just,
Frankie Ray. No,
Frankie Ray.
Oh, Nova from Silver Surfer, the Herald of Galactus.
I mean, but long story short, I mean, any book that has Dick Ryder in there, that's
the worst name.
One thing that's not a bad name, though, is the Last Comic Shop Podcast. We came up with it, and we keep on putting up episodes that we hope that you listen to every single week. And an easy way to do that is going out to www.lastcomicshoppodcast.com, rate, reviewing, and subscribing so you don't miss any of the future Dick Ryder jokes that we might include in other future episodes. Because it's going to come up. I mean, we have to read Nova eventually. Like, there's got to be a good Nova. Like, Annihilation. Eventually, we should get around to reading Annihilation.
Nova was badass in the rebooted Cosmic Universe.
Yeah, he was.
I'm still shocked he never got a movie.
Right. Redeveloped, the Nova Corps is like the version of the Green Lanterns, and they gave him all the power. It was pretty cool. And one thing that's super cool is, again, the Last Comic Shop. Make sure that you rate, reviewing, and subscribing on all those podcasting platforms and YouTube.
And while we might be the Last Comic Shop podcast, we won't be the Last Comic Shop. So we encourage everybody to get out there and find stuff new and old. Maybe you want to go back to those classic Shade the Changing Man issues we talked about today. Maybe you want to go with the new Flash Gordon that's just coming out from Mad Cape Studios. Tons of fun there. Maybe you want to do the new Gods from Rom B and Evan Cagle. Or maybe you want some old New Warriors. Or kind of older-ish. I guess New 52 is 10 years ago, 11 years ago. But the Justice League Dark, the first trades of Justice League Dark that have Shade the Changing Man floating around in there. All of that and more waits for you at your local comic shop. And you can always go back to the website, www.lastcomicshoppodcast.com, where you can find what else waiting for you there, J.A.
I'll always have a link to our merch store. You can get your T-shirts, your coffee mugs, your tote bags, hats, all sorts of comic shop paraphernalia. This week, we've got a special on onesies.
And they actually have those, I think. I think they do have onesies. You can't get them in adult sizes.
Certain age range.
They're really baby onesies. But still, put your baby in a Last Comic Shop podcast onesie. There you go. Why not?
Never made sense to me. Why make it so difficult with the babies and the buttons and the...
Oh, man, the onesies. Those were the easiest. You just unsnap and put a new diaper on, put the snaps back.
That's right.
No, you're going into the M zone there.
And the snaps on the shoulder because the baby had a massive head and a little body. Here, fun fact. Do you know that there's one part of a baby that is the same size from when you're born to when you die?
Really?
Yes.
What is it?
Your eyes.
Oh.
No, they actually do. I mean, millimeters. They grow much less than the rest of a baby, obviously, but they do grow.
Wow,
babies
actually.
have big eyes.
Makes sense.
I didn't think about that.
One thing that we hope that you always think about is how to save money on your comic book supplies.
Yes.
And Mikey, how's the best way to do that?
It is by going to BCW and ordering some supplies and using our Fancy Pants little coupon code, which is LCS Pod. So that's LCSPOD, and you will get a wonderful little discount from your items purchased there, such as comic book boxes and bags and boards and all those wonderful things to keep your back issues of Steve Ditko's Shade the Changing Man comfy and cozy.
And they have those self-sealing bags there.
Those are the best, man.
Oh, they are. You know what? I bought a pack of the self-sealings. I was putting it, and then I bought a batch of the non-self-sealings. I was kicking myself. I was just throwing them against the wall. I was like, these are garbage. I have to pull out my tape dispenser. This is garbage.
I like the tape dispenser. Don't be telling all these people about this self-sealing. It sounds counterintuitive, which I guess is why people...
You know, you shouldn't use the tape dispenser. People do the painter's tape now because it doesn't...
Yeah, I don't
doesn't what?
that.
It doesn't rip. I mean, it's garish to see like the blue strip or whatever back there.
Oh, no.
But yeah, the clear tape, man. That's always that's.
No, you don't use the clear tape. You got to use the matte tape.
Same thing.
No, it's not. No.
Oh, the masking tape.
What kind of witchcraft is that?
That's just
yes.
This is how particular I am, and Cheryl thinks this is weird. You know when you have a tape roller that Scotch tape comes in its own little dispenser. When you pull the tape off, you could see there's a line from where it started. It goes as far as that line. That's when I rip it off, and I put that in the middle of the flap. It's only that long. Yeah. I'm like that. And if it's any different than that, I get all like.
We could have a whole show about this, but whether you want self-sealing bags or not, make sure you use the LCSPOD promo code at checkout. Get yourself 10% off on your comic book supplies. And until next week, I was the host with most, Andy Larson. I was joined by Chad Smith, Jay Scott, and the wonderful Mikey Wood. And we hope that you stay safe. Stay changing.
Change those onesies, definitely.
Change your underwear.
What do tight underwear and a cheap mansion have in common?
What's that?
No ballroom. Right?
Comic Shop podcast was a 2025 Black Angus production.